Hello, Bronco fans, and welcome back to Four Course Sports, where we dive into the delectable world of WMU sports. I am Jack Mennicke.
And I'm Joey Hartzell, lead sports reporter.
And today we're talking about WMU football and their matchup today for Central Michigan University, the battle for the Canon, and what it means for the Broncos. But yeah, let's dive right into it.
Let's start with the appetizers. After starting 4-0 in the MAC, Western Michigan has now lost 2 straight games, falling 42-28 to NIU 2 weeks ago and 31-13 to Bowling Green this past week. The Broncos are now 5-5 going into this battle for the Canon with Central Michigan, and they're 4-2 in the MAC. But obviously you saw the MAC championship game. Hope's still alive, being at 4-2 in the MAC. Going to need some help from some teams in front of you like Bowling Green and Miami, Ohio. But keeping your bowl eligibility alive, and there's a lot in front of this Broncos football team still.
Yeah, that brings us right into the main course. Let's talk a little bit about last week's loss. The Broncos were never really able to get their offense rolling. 3 of the first 4 possessions for the Broncos were 3 and outs. Going into halftime, the score was 17-7. And then the struggles continued in the second half as the Broncos' first drive ended a punt. WMU was able to put another touchdown on the board before the end of the third, and the score was 31-13 going into the fourth. But in that fourth quarter, their only drives resulted in turnovers, and they weren't able to come back. But yeah, I think there was a lot more in that game that maybe we didn't really see for the scoreboard. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the story for the last 2 weeks has been the defense. The defense has really struggled. Telly Johnson Jr. for NIU came in, freshman running back, when Ontario Brown went down and went for 150 yards. So rough run defense, and then star tight end Harold Fannin Jr., who by most accounts has been the best tight end in the country this year, regardless of level. He did the same things to Penn State and Texas A&M, 2 great defenses, but 10 catches for almost 150 yards against Western with a couple of touchdowns. Just ridiculous video game numbers out of Harold Fannin Jr. But the defense has given up 30-plus points in 7 of its 10 games so far. And even the games where it's playing the inferior competition, the Bethune-Cookman, the Kent State even in the MAC, a team that hadn't held a lead all year until this past week. The defense is still giving up 20-plus points, which that's kind of a red flag sometimes when you can't hold inferior competition to less than 25 points. But luckily for Western Michigan, Central's also struggling. The Chippewas are on a 5-game losing streak and have allowed 36 points per game in those 5 games. So bright side of that is that 2 struggling teams, and Central Michigan has struggled significantly more than Western Michigan, which is good news for an offense that has kind of lost its way after a really strong stretch of the season.
Yeah, and I think that brings us right into the sides, where let's talk about a little bit more struggles before we dive into some hope. In the first 4 MAC games for the Broncos, quarterback Hayden Wolf, he averaged 235.75 passing yards per game, 2.7 passing touchdowns per game, and had an average completion percentage of 73.4%. But in these last 2 games, these last 2 losses, he has averaged just 187 passing yards, 0.5 touchdowns per game, and had a completion percentage of 63.5. In last year's battle for the Canon, Wolf threw for 333 yards and 3 touchdowns while completing 25 of 36 passes. So I think that if the Broncos can get that first 4 MAC game this season of Wolf back, and then that obviously if they can get anything close to the Wolf from last year's battle for the Canon, I think that they will be in a good spot to win this game against the Chippewas. What do you think?
I think this Central Michigan defense is a lot more akin to a lot of the defenses we played earlier in that we saw earlier in the MAC season. You're talking about the Kent States, the Akrons of the conference, and I think Central Michigan's a lot more comparable than an NIU defense who held Notre Dame to 14 points at home. Like NIU and Bowling Green are 2 very good football teams. Bowling Green gave Texas A&M and Penn State both all they could handle on the road, 2 top 15 teams in the country. Bowling Green was right there with them the entire way. NIU beat a really, really good Notre Dame team on the road. And so I think that, getting back into a more bottom of the MAC level defense, I think that that'll really bode well for this offense that was clicking, really, really clicking for a while there. But jumping right into the dessert, the Broncos were at the top of the MAC standings after that 4-game stretch where Hayden Wolf was tearing it up before the 2 losses. And now the Broncos sit in the 6th spot. Ohio and Bowling Green are in the top 2 spots with a 5-1 record. And they're really in the driver's seat right now for this MAC championship game appearance. It'll take a lot of uphill work for Western Michigan to get there, and a little bit of help from the guys at the top.
Yeah, like you mentioned, we need some help from the guys at the top.
Definitely.
Probably need to win these 2 games to even be considered.
Almost a necessity to even have a chance at with all of the teams kind of stuck at the top. There's kind of been all year for the MAC. There's kind of been a glob at the top and a glob at the bottom, and to stay on pace with that glob at the top is going to take a lot of work from Western Michigan. Going to have to win those 2 games. Very possible though. Central Michigan is 1-5 in the MAC, and Eastern Michigan, who's the final opponent on the schedule at the end of the year, is currently 2-4 in the MAC. So a really good opportunity for Western Michigan to not only get to a bowl game, keep themselves at the top of the MAC standings, but also control the state of Michigan at the MAC level.
All right, that about does it for us. Make sure to tune in to that game tonight at 7:30 on ESPN2. I've been Jack Mennicke.
And I'm Joey Hartzell. Go Broncos.